Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to talk about transitioning values in this video. It's one of the key types of techniques and concepts to bring kind of visual variety into your pieces in the way that we treat open spaces as well as specific objects. So the specific object could be a waterfall in general or just a simple rock within that waterfall, any type of thing like that. If we introduce transitioning values or different values on something like a three-dimensional object like this, it brings lighting into the space. Okay, now that's different than transitioning values are where you take something and you transition it. It could be whatever, potter's clay memento colors, okay? Now that's the color that this ink represents at full strength. But when you transition this, let me just show you right here, from its full value to white, you're getting everything in between. Now this is a really key type of process right here, because what you really do is you really expand on the range potential of every single given ink you have. You can have 20 different colors of ink, okay? But when you utilize them, you can have thousands of colors of those 20 colors or something like that. Because you have potter's clay, for example, in its full strength, and then you have a 90%, 80%, 70%, 50%, you know, so on and so forth, right down to like a 5% to 1% of the range of that one given color. Now, most people are used to utilizing their inks in their full value, meaning using them, you know, just as strong as you can possibly be. Now, that's the difference between coloring something, okay, like a whole space. Outline designs are often kind of designed to be used. I mean, you can use them in this type of transitioning value concept as, you know, but most people color outline designs completely, like a coloring book. It's more like kind of working in stained glass or something like that, where each kind of portion of a given design or area is colored in full, okay? All right, so that's the biggest thing when people are thinking about, I don't know, trying some of my techniques right here, and they think, oh my gosh, that's so hard to do. And I get it. If you've only done kind of full strength coloring with everything, that meaning markers, pigment inks, colored pencils, etc. Usually people that utilize colored pencil or something like that, they're used to using kind of ranges because they're, you know, fully comfortable with, you know, if you press harder with a colored pencil, you get a stronger value of it than using a lighter value, okay? But when it comes to wet media, I think that's where people get a little bit confused in the beginning. I mean, it's an easy concept, though. I'll show you right here. I'll just, we'll show you just how easy it is. Okay, so what I've done right here, let's get right into it. And I'll show you this in different media as well. Okay, so for something like this, I'll be using the stamp sketches that I've done in the previous two videos right here. Okay, now when we're looking at something like this, oftentimes if we're thinking of high noon or something like that, I don't know what time of day it would be, but something like a high noon type of thing, we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, that is sky. Sky is blue. All right. So sometimes they're thinking, okay, here's a sky blue color right here, okay? Now, it is perfectly fine to color that in completely, okay? But it's going to look somewhat flat. Anytime you do treat something exactly the same over the entire surface or area within an object, it flattens it out because there's no variation in it at all. It's like my hand right here. You can see just various values of it. There's lighter and darker areas, shadows down here. If I go like that, this area right here isn't inherently a certain color, but this is another thing that people think of. They think of local color, okay? Tree is green, grass is green, something like that. So they're thinking in terms of, okay, let me see. I'll get sky blue here, and this is this is bamboo leaves or something like that. But they're thinking of green, all right? But they're not thinking of an object being multiple shades of something, okay? Let's find a little object right here. This is a certain color of red, right? And it's, flat. But look at this. There are multiple shades now of that exact same red based on the way that the light hits it, okay? So we are working on, two-dimensional objects in here, and that's where kind of the disconnect happens a lot of times, okay? These are flat, but, in order to give the illusion of these forms in here, and objects, whatever, being three-dimensional, then we have to treat them a little bit differently, okay? Now, let's just start off right here. There's an easy way to go. Okay, I'm just using a paper towel right here. This one's a glossy cardstock piece of paper. I'll do this on the mat too. This is, these techniques and concepts are not changing with the surface that you've chosen to stamp your compositions on. Okay, so let me just ink this up. Normally I would start off with a re-inker, but that's not this video right here. I'm just, I want things to be, very easy. Let's just start off with our, I don't know, just straight from pad, okay? All right, so I'm really soaking this in right here. I'm not even sure how much ink is on my pad here, but let's start inking this in, okay? And what I'm doing is I'm just going over this, and I'm starting from the outside edge in. Okay, now I'm starting with a very light tone of blue. Summer sky is very, very light in value, okay? But let's go for a little bit of variation. I'm getting a little bit of streaking coming from my imagery right here. It's smearing a little bit, but I'm not worried about that. I did stamp these a couple days ago, so that's kind of unusual. I thought it would be completely set, but if you're worried about that, you can stamp things out in like a StazOn or something like that, or heat set a little bit more. It's very humid where I am right now, so maybe they didn't dry completely. But here we go with that kind of transitioning tone, okay? You can't really see it, but it starts a little bit darker over here and it's lighter in here, but you can see where I've left some areas of white in there, okay? You'll be able to see it much more distinctly when I go to my next color value of blue, okay? All right, so inking it up like so. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this into my grassy area as well, okay? And you see how easy this is? I always tell people, something is easy to make look easy if it's an easy process. I'll show you, this is so light of a color. if you go like this, don't do this on your scenes, okay? But all right, no big deal. Now I see a big splotch right there, but it is so light. It doesn't even matter. You can barely see it. I can barely see it where I am, right in front of my face too. Okay, now don't do that now. But that's just to show you how haphazard and terrible a technique you can do. If you just start off light, okay? But what this is doing is it's very subtle, in a very subtle way, it's establishing my lighting in this piece. This is kind of the opposite of working with on a dark piece of paper like this. But there's transitioning tones here. There's kind of lighter in here, and it transitions out into the darkness. Lighter right here, transitions into the dark. This is working with white on this one. But I also did work some black in here, and it's darker in here, and lighter in here. Here's the white here. See these transitioning tones? Much whiter here in the lighter area than over here, right? As it moves away from that light source. So when you're working with white, you're working with transitioning tones as well. This is one right here where I'm working with a white colored pencil. Whiter right here, darker over here. You see how that goes? So you can do it with any type of media or any type of technique that you're doing. White on dark, dark on white. Okay, now let's move into the next color so it's much easier to see. But make it easy for yourself. Start off with your lighter tone. Very light tone. That's easier to do than starting it off with a dark tone. You can do that with this one. I start off with black a lot of times on my foils and other types of papers like that. But when we're working on a white piece of paper, and if you want a nice rich surface with a lot of beautiful jeweled kind of, depth within your color scheme, use multiple tones. Okay, here's a Bahama blue right here. What would you say? That's kind of like a cobalt medium tone blue or something like that. Here we go. Okay, transitioning like this. I'm doing a very light touch, okay? Think about it like you're applying like a thin powder. You're not, but that's the concept here, okay? It's not like you're applying like a thick, full saturation of that, okay? What you're doing is you're going like that. See how that transition goes? Now see, I'm not just applying it like this and this, okay? I guess you can, watch this, in one stroke. It's more like this, okay? I'll show you what I'm doing, okay? Now see, every time I touch down, I'm kind of starting on the outside like this. Now as this gets drier on this, I am going in here a little bit more, but maybe use a lighter touch as you transition it into the lighter areas, okay? Doesn't mean you have to hit it hard in the darker areas or something like that. I mean, you can, but it's always better to get it in repetition. This is doing it on the worst paper you can possibly do it on. Just cheap copy paper, okay? All right, so let's see what, like that. Not bad for a piece of, paper towel, right? You can use a kitchen sponge if you want to, or, I don't know, some sort of applicator. Most of the applicators I find out there these days in the crafting world, I think are kind of useless. I think they look like a brush or something like that, but they kind of counter, they kind of work counter to kind of the concept of what they're kind of designed for, like a makeup brush. You can use them, okay, but they're synthetics and they're not really designed for wet media. They're designed for, like powdery makeup. Okay. So see how that transition goes? So it looks a little bit more like depth in there, okay, than just doing it the whole way. Let's go over to the dark blue. This is a Danube blue. Now watch this. This is where when people are getting into the darker tones, sometimes they go in as far as they did with the previous two colors. Now you can, but just do it with the drier one. But just in general, what you do is you stay on the outside a little bit more. Now here's the thing too. When you're first starting to do this, you're thinking about kind of the feel of how it is to apply But now that we're on our third value of blue, our third color that we're applying, what happens to this paper right here? The paper gets a little bit more saturated with moisture from the previous two inks. Okay, so what that becomes is it's less absorbent than when we applied our summer sky. So this wetter kind of surface right here isn't absorbing our ink as fast. So you have to kind of stay on the outside a little bit more, you know, as the paper kind of absorbs or dries, you know. And just be careful about filling in all of your area in here with really dark ink, because one kind of stroke of it, okay, on a wet surface goes farther in than your lighter one did. Because the lighter one, again, you know, you're doing it on a very dry paper, so it's absorbing very quickly, okay? But when you're going with, you know, a darker color over kind of almost maybe a super saturated surface of the pre-existing colors that you've already applied, you know, it's not coming off of your applicator as fast. So you're getting a much longer kind of stroke at full strength, at full moisture or whatever. Okay, but you can see that right there. Those are the transitioning tones, okay? But look at it. That looks like a deep sky. It's not all flat. It's not all Danube blue or something like that, or all just summer sky flat, okay? It almost looks like a cloud or something like that. Now that's what's going on down in my grass as well. And you're saying, well, what do you mean by that? Any area in this thing, you're just working with different colors now, okay? It's not a different concept, all right? So here we go. Pear. All right, now you don't have to start off with these colors. I just grabbed the colors that I had. Mix and match your colors, okay? Now, in a technique like this on glossy paper, don't mix and match with pigment inks and oxides and dyes or something like that unless you're going for some, you know, specific multimedia type of look, okay? But here, let's go with the lightest color again. It's really bright too, so I'm kind of wiping it off a little bit first. Let's go in here and let's bring in this. Now I have to be careful around my covered bridge. Okay, I don't want necessarily a green covered bridge. If I get a little of that color in there though, I'm not going to worry about it or sweat it. This is some grass down here, okay. Now I can do these trees in fall tones, okay, but on this one right here, let's just say that it's springtime or something like that. Summer, early summer, you know. These are still nice and green or whatnot. All right. Now in these trees, I'm also thinking about the different forms within the trees, okay? There's lighter tones in areas of the tree. Okay, you see those lights and darks in here? This is where it gets a little trickier, okay? But I'll show you how easy it is to work with this. Do you see how this is darker right here and lighter right here? So see, when I color with the lightest color, I might color the whole tree. But when I get into my darker tones, I might just color the shadow areas so we get variation within the tree itself. Well, where do you color? Where do you know how to put variation? Well, you color the darker areas darker with your darker greens, and you keep your lighter areas light, okay? So you see there's a little area of dark, light, dark. I've done this on the designs themselves, so it doesn't have to be a big mystery. But, I mean, you're not holding to that shading convention exactly. It's not as if you're going to go like this. Oh my God, I put, you know, dark green in the light, you know, the lighter green area or something like that. And, you know, it's a mistake or something like that. My shading and tonal variations in the designs themselves are just kind of a head start, you know, or a suggested area that you can color in. Now, you can color these in. Now, here's another thing, too. If that's too detailed an area to get in there with, let's go to the bamboo right here, okay? If that area in there is just too detailed, then just, I don't know, you have your markers and things like this. I'll use these, too. Here's a couple different green tones, different values, right? Okay, let's hit it with a little bit of bamboo leaves, just with the dye bastings here. Let's see if you can tell the difference just with this, okay? You see this down here? Can you tell that's a brighter green down there than the duller green? Okay, this is the light green that I've used in here. See this right down here? Now that's not the way it's going to look in the finished result because I'm going to use a couple other colors of green. But variation doesn't have to just be that dark, wet to dry right here. Variation can also just be where you've taken certain areas, and within those areas, you just make them a little bit darker and lighter here and there. You see that right there? It took like 3 seconds to color that one in with your darker tones. Watch this little area down here. Now, I put some blue down there because blue is a component of green, okay? Blue plus yellow, and forms green. So it becomes kind of my base, but now I'm just purposely trying to, keep that a little varied so you can see right there. But I mean, you see right here, there's none of that green. But yeah, like I said, it's not that, you don't have to be that particular about it. It's just, again, it's just to create that variation. Here's cottage ivy. It's kind of like a dark pine green or something like that. All right. I look for opportunities like under trees, because under trees you'd probably have shadow areas, right? Okay. See this right in here? I'm kind of hitting it where I used the previous green. Again, if I didn't use kind of the medium tone green, I might not go into it with this cottage ivy, the darkest of greens. But let's show you just how varied your grass is going to be with this. I'm not worried about the rocks. I'm just going over the rocks. I'm not going to try to work around a rock. I'm making rocks green, okay? But let's look at this in terms of a statement on lighting, just with that little dotting, okay? So see this right here? See that variation within the trees, within the grass down here? There's more variety than just coloring it right in. All right, so that is not hard to do in terms of a process. It might be hard in terms of a concept, again, if you're used to coloring the whole thing in. But what this looks like in terms of a technique, you can tell me if this is hard or not, okay? And people tell me this too. I'm too heavy-handed. It's not really that, because anyone can go like, you can hold it like this and go like this. Okay, but what it is people focus in and they revert a lot of times. So they go like this, they're dabbing. Okay, I'm dabbing very lightly. And then they fill in like that. And again, it's almost like one value of green right there, right? But it's more like this. It could be like that with your lightest of color, but then with your darkest of color, it's like that, okay? So dabbing under, kind of hitting those areas like that. Now, we don't want a bunch of like polka dots around here or something like that, of darker colors or something like that. But, it's the foundation of those lighter colors kind of provide kind of an evening out of something like that. If I only did that in the darkest of color over white, okay, it would look real blotchy. But it all fills in with the use of those undertones, okay? All right, let's use a brown, on this. Look at this, we're just using the same kind of little applicator here. I might have to go with another one here. I'm just trying to make a point here. I would switch to another paper towel, but look at that. This isn't even a full paper towel. It's like a little piece of one, okay? All right. Now, how do you approach something like this, an object or a road like this, okay? So a lot of times people are, when they see a road like that, it's like this, okay? Right here, okay? Right here. Now they're thinking about doing it uniformly, which might look like this. Okay? And again, this is all one value. that really flattens that space out, right? There's no transition, no lighting in it whatsoever. It's the exact same concept as that sky up there. Well, what do you mean by that? You know, the sky is this kind of wide open area, okay? All right, let's look at it right here. Yeah, you can do this in whatever way you want to. It can go from dark to light down here, dark to light up there. It can go dark, light, dark, whatever you want, okay? Let's do this right here. Now see, this brown right here, I can go in the grass, no problem. Why? Because it's very light of a value right here. You can be doing this in colored pencils or whatever. Like I said, it doesn't, you know, this is the same concept. This is a lighting concept. It's not a media specific concept. Oh, well, let's take a look at my white one right here. See this right here? You see how this road is a little bit lighter right here, and there's a break in it, so it goes from kind of darker to lighter to just blue paper, and you know, more of the white right here. So it's a little bit varied. You see it from a distance, you know, you can really see it like that. And same thing in here, lighter, darker, lighter, you know. I mean, this is darker out here, but I'm talking about white. And look at my rooftop here. It's lighter on the top and darker on the side. Let's show you what that looks like here. Okay, so on this road right here, I think I like the idea of a little bit of dark, light, dark like that. But look at this now. That road is illuminated now. Instead of just doing coloring, what you're really doing is you're lighting, because it goes dark, light, dark. Look at this grass right here. Dark, light, light. You know what I mean? It's oscillating in there. Let's look at this mill right here. Okay, now this is a light color here. If you want to get some tone over the whole thing, then color in the whole thing like this, okay? That's what the lightest color, okay? What is this? Desert sand, okay? I don't have another memento that's a darker brown. I'm going to use my Marvy brown, okay? It's quite a bit darker, though. See this right here? Well, not a huge amount. I don't know. Whatever. Okay, maybe this is too dark. What do? Make it easy for yourself. Dry it off like this. Now, what are you using? You're using a drier version of this, right? And drier versions give lighter applications, okay? It's almost like dry brushing if you were a painter. Okay, now let's watch this go. A couple little swipes. Now look at that covered bridge. Look how three-dimensional it looks, because the rooftop is lighter. But, see this rooftop in here? It's kind of going off into the distance like that, just like this road, right? So I'm not thinking about that in terms of like a two-dimensional shape. I'm thinking about it like a rooftop going off into the distance. Maybe some of those trees are creating a little bit of shadow. Let's transition our rooftop a little bit, okay? Let's put a little bit of this brown up there, or whatever color you want a rooftop to be, okay? Could be a different, you know, could be corrugated steel or something like that. Let me put a little bit of this too on this side of the covered bridge. Markers might be easier here. Okay, let's put some of this on the road too. Okay. See, I'm just going with that very dry version of this. If I squeeze down, there's still a lot in there. Okay. But you just use a lighter touch. It's like you're applying powder or something like that. And you get a really good amount of control over it. I like some of my brown in my trees as well. I think it makes it a little bit more earthy and natural. That, okay. So now let's look at this. Look how three-dimensional that object looks. Here's a little bit of that brown here. You have this rooftop up here. It's darker in the background. See it transitions like that? Same thing with this road. It transitions from brown to light. You know what I mean? If that bothers you, I mean, you could. You get, you know, a little bit of lighter in here, or you can take, you know, your markers, something like this. Here's a Copic, not a Copic, but an alcohol marker. And you can get your shadows in here, you know, really specific areas. I'm just kind of going like this. Okay. I mean, you can go with the lighter version too. Or, I don't know, what is this? Brownish gray. Okay, but look at this right here. You can get into your shadows and really get into those spots. And see, I'm kind of leaving my lighter areas light. But what is this again? It's variation, all right? So that was green. If you need to blend it, grab your blender pen and blend out. You're not going to blend out the dye-based inks, okay? But you can blend out your alcohol inks right on top of that, all right? Let's go with the brownish gray. Look at this one right here. Isn't that kind of a perfect tone for this bridge? You go on the side of the bridge like this, or underneath the eaves. You can go inside the interior. You get some of these, bricks underneath the piece. Let's use some of this brownish gray around our grassy area, okay? Like I said, browns and greens look very earthy and kind of a little bit more natural than just using only green for green. What does that do? It makes it so much easier to blend in because you don't have to keep the greens away from the browns away from the greens. What's harder to do? Staying really specific and not going into anything at all, or just blending whole things together. You can tell me which one's a hard way to do this. They're saying you make things look so easy. Being very specific and not being able to overlap anything, super careful placement, that to me is harder to do. But they're not talking about, again, when people tell me, this is a blender pen right here. When people tell me I make things look so easy, it's just because it's going against kind of a much more complicated process, or more, not complicated, but kind of a much more tedious process in terms of inking, okay? Now this is a blender pen, so when you're blending green, you're getting a little green on here. Why not bring some of that into your mill? Because what you're doing is you're kind of creating, we're lighting in here as opposed to doing just straight coloring. So if you have some of that green and it's going into the brown, fine, it's reflecting. Like if I had a red mirror here or something like that and light was hitting it and reflecting back on this mill, you'd have red on there, okay? So that's the same thing that happens to a kind of a lesser degree when lighting is hitting a green leaf and reflecting back onto that object right there, okay? Leaves and stuff like that aren't quite so mirrored, but they are a little bit. Now watch this right down here. This little sandy bank, that's not really conducive for, coloring in with a paper towel, but when you're doing it with a pen, perfectly easy to do like that, okay? All right, so let's see, let's create a little bit more kind of a rustic nature to this bridge, like the wood on here. Let's not go too dark. I don't know, I might have to go a little bit dark right here. Now, let's see. Shuttle art and, I don't know, plumes, permanence here. Now watch this right here. I think this is going to stand out a little bit too much, but see that how definitive a mark that is right there? That doesn't look too good, right? So what you do is you just lay it down. Now this is on the glossy cardstock, so it really allows you to, that's almost the exact same color. Let's go back with our lighter tone, okay? We'll go to our lighter tone, or your blending pen, and just kind of blend that out a little bit. Well, it's still a little bit wet, okay? And that looks to me a little bit more aged, too, like that, okay? All right, let me hit that on a couple of these beams up on the roof, or whatever you call it. Inside the interior a little bit too. All right. Okay, so what do we have? Are these different techniques in the sky, sand, or, the dirt down here? Okay, so this is like air, leaves, wood, I guess, wood and steel, I don't know, whatever, water, rocks, grass, road. All right, let's take a look at this and look for variations in value. We go from dark to light in here. This is just an entire space, okay? There's a lot more to fill in there, so there's a lot more variety, potentially. I could have done like a whole area of light. Now, you could have stamped a moon up here, but it would still be kind of lighter in here and darker out here. You'd stamp clouds, whatever. It's the exact same concept. You're going for variation. Light, dark. Look at the trees right here. We have areas of light and dark because they're billowy, types of forms within this space. There's light and darks within those spaces, okay? They're very textural and deep and whatnot, okay? So, but there's variation in here. Lights and darks within those trees, okay? And we're just doing the same type of thing down in this grassy area, okay? This is a very small space, but look at the variety within that space. There's some browns in the green, darker greens, lighter green. Same thing in here. You see how this goes from darker, light, darker, lighter right here, darker right here. Just that little strip right there. Look at the water down here. Blue, nothing. Okay, so it's darker to lighter right here. In the shadow areas underneath my tree. But don't let that get complicated. I'm not thinking about, when I'm stamping this out, I'm not thinking, okay, that's going to be green, right? This could be a winter scene and it's just all just blues or something like that at nighttime, okay? Kind of like this, all right? But do you see, okay, no, I was talking about the trees in here. On this one right here, I'm starting on with the blue piece of paper, so I'm hitting those areas of my trees with white up here to make them lighter, so we have our lights and darks in that thing. Speaking of that, let's try some things out too. And just to kind of illustrate what I'm referring to in terms of it doesn't matter what media you're working with, you're doing the exact same concept, okay? Now on here, there aren't white dye-based inks, okay? It's not, dye-based inks are colored or, they're clear, all right? So let's work with some opacity here, okay? Let's work with some paint pens here. Here's a light green paint pen, and this one is a white paint pen. Okay, this one's my kind of foundational color that I'm often working in. One of my pens is going a little bit dry on me, so let's see if I can get this one. If there's much paint left in this one, I might have to use a new one. Okay. If I do, I'll pause this video. I like to get every last drop of paint out of my paint pens, which these ones allow me to do. I don't know, I haven't had clogging on me yet, but you do have to shake them up every time. Okay. All right, so what do we do? How do you highlight things, okay? That's confusing for people, and I get it too, because we're usually applying dark on light. We're usually working with white pieces of paper, okay? Now, this is a white piece of paper, but it is no longer white anymore. And a lot of times people are still, when they get something like this, they're still breaking out of that whole idea of whole fill-ins, okay? But let's take a look at this. This one's very specific in terms of our applications of lighter forms, okay? So on here, you can see where these areas are lighter, and then it transitions darker, okay? You can see where I've used more white on this one. Now that's using pigmenting. This is using a white paint pen, okay? Which is, oh, this is not this one right here. Here's right here. This is my alcohol pen. So let's go in here and start varying our usage of this as well. So you vary your usage with dye-based inks, alcohol inks, whatever. Let's see. Okay, let's start off with our green, okay? And why are we starting off with green? You don't have to. You can just go on straight with white, okay? But this is something where you're starting a little bit darker on dark. So on white pieces of paper with my inks, I started with light over light. But this colored green is darker than white, okay? Now, like I said, you can just go on straight with white. Don't let this confuse you now. But if you have it, your colored paint pens, gel pens, whatever. You can use gel pens too. I'm just going with this first, okay? Because why is that? I start off with a lighter shades, values of ink of my dye-based inks because it doesn't show up as much on white pieces of paper. Well, I'm going with a colored green over green because it doesn't show up as much as white. You see what I mean? So I take things very, incrementally or whatnot, but let's see what these highlights will do. Now, some areas, this color of green won't show up very much because I'm doing it over the same color green that's underneath it, or almost the same value. This one's going to be a little bit of a warmer green. It's kind of a yellow green. Well, let's apply this in here and let's see how effective it is, okay? Now, where are you putting that, Kevin? I'm putting it on the top billowy parts of the tree. I'm not putting it in the darker areas. I'm putting it in the lighter areas up there. Okay? Now we've colored it in. I can't tell where the lighter areas are. Well, you can generally tell where you stamped your image in black is. So see how I'm avoiding those areas. I'm not toning in like all in there. I'm toning above it, okay? Here's the top portion of this tree right here, and it's lighter. And you're just going in here and adding some in there, okay? Okay, now let's take a look and see how that looks over here. All right, see those little areas like that? It's kind of bringing that area to life. That's what it looks like without it. That's what it looks like what it's with. I'll show you how easy this is too. A little can go a long way. Let's watch this down here, okay? Hitting it with some light, like that. I don't know, what is that, like 2 seconds worth of toning, right? Or highlighting, but look at that. You've added lighting in there, but you've also added texture. Let's look at this area in here. I think it looks okay, but let's see if it looks any better with the highlights. On the grasses, here's the top portion of the grasses as well, okay? See this right here where I've oscillated my lights and darks. See how I've put shadows in here like that? The highlighting will be like right here. It'll be like over the top of that, right in here, where there's white. Okay, see that right there? White, or lighter, in here. This is what it looks like. Now, again, I'm not trying to say, okay, I'm on the light. Oh my God, I put it in my shadow area. It's not, it's not that big of a deal. But that's just in general where I'm putting it, okay? Now watch this too over here, okay? In the grasses like that. Now watch what I do too. I was talking about this with someone the other day, or maybe it was yesterday. I was talking about kind of varying your amount of dots, okay? Now, if this is really super dark green over here, I'm probably seeing that there's shadows in here. So I'm not putting a bunch of highlights and shadows, because it's lighter to begin with. But let's take a look in here. Can you see the difference between, those little dots in there? See that little area in there? Doesn't it bring that area to life a little bit? Let's put a few over here too. It's going to get a little bit darker, but see, what I do is I kind of dissipate it. I kind of have it more in the lighter areas, okay? And I put less in the darker areas, okay? But look at that. I think that's really bringing those trees to life. Now, I have a set of, 42 colors or something like that. You can bring in this other yellow in here, something of that sort. You can put, maybe there's some blossoms, on those trees or something like that. Let's go to the white, and you'll be able to see a little bit more distinctly. Look at that brown on there. Look how varied that looks there from a textural standpoint. If you're doing this with colored pencils, you can really hit some kind of cool textures on there. Colored pencils on the matte paper, not on the, the glossy. Okay, so highlighting on the trees with white, okay? I'm putting it on the top of the tree like that. Okay, see that? See how I kind of cluster it, and then I put a little bit more space as it moves away from that lit portion. Okay, see that right there? I don't want to get too. Let's try to get a little more close up right here. Okay, see this right here? Cluster, spread, cluster, spread out, cluster, spread out. All right, clustered, spread out, cluster, distance, clustered, distance, close, far, whatever you want to call it. Okay. See like that? Look at those trees. Don't those trees look a lot more kind of dimensional that now? Near, far, near, far. I think you get the point. I don't want to say that. I don't know what. Okay. Now look at this area. Look how those trees are brought to life. Now look at this area down here. Clustered, cluster, cluster, cluster. These could even be little flowers, wildflowers. They could be white wildflowers or something of that sort. Oh, look at this one. Remember I put those ones right back in here? Watch this right here. It really brings that area to life, doesn't it? Now, you have to kind of look at this at arm's distance occasionally too, okay? Because when we're working with little details like that, we're observing like a 1/4 inch space, okay? And these little dots can really stand out, okay, strongly. So it's important for you to kind of hold it at an arm's distance and take a look at what you're doing. Now, I was telling someone, now when I'm talking about clustering, things like this, see this? I'm putting more in my lighter area right here. So you can barely see that white right here, right? Sorry, white. You can put a lot in here. You can put a gazillion, and it barely shows. But if I put that dot down here, it really shows up it's too much. So what you do is you kind of put space in between there, okay? See this right here? The more you go into the darkness, you space your dots apart. Now everyone has a tendency to space things out when they first start doing this equally. They put everything kind of a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch apart. What you want to do is you want to cluster, okay? And then spread, dissipate it, okay? Because it's going from light to dark, just like we went from dark to light, okay? You treat these the same way, but you're defining things with each dot. All right, now, let me show you what I do on some rocks, okay? Now see this rock right here? It's, a really tiny rock, but what you do is you don't color in the whole rock, you just color in the top portions of them like this, like a little dot like this. Okay, so when you put a little dot of color on tops of some of these rocks, what you're doing is they're colored, so there's a little white dot on the top of them, but then there's color on the side. So what are you doing? You're making a transition tone from dark to light in here. So imagine this is a rock right here. Okay, it's going from light on the top to darker below. You can do that on the tiniest of little details like this. So I'm just putting this little highlight on some of these rocks. Maybe that stands out a little bit too much, but you can kind of see it. Here's that rock in there, and that's why I didn't worry about coloring my rocks within this place, because I have this. Here's some rocks on this road. You can color them in. A little dot like that if you want to. Okay, but you see these rocks in my stream down here? I'm just putting a little dot on them. If they're dark, then maybe I don't highlight it too much. But now, look at all that visual variety down here. All right, maybe it looks too polka dotty to you, but that's not the distance that we're viewing it at. We're viewing it at this distance right here. Now I don't know if you want to go kind of crazy and go with a little bit of texturing and highlights on my rooftop or something like that. But you can put these in here like that. And I'm not drawing like this. Okay, I'm kind of going like that. And what is that? right there. That's kind of the same thing as this, but the opposite. Instead of it doing it in dark and light, you're doing it on white on dark. So you get that little transition. So look at this little rooftop right here. See, it's like lighter on top like that, and it goes into the darker area, all right? Now, I don't know if I would do that. I'm doing it just to kind of make a point of this whole transitioning type of value thing. You can do it with the smallest of little details, okay? All right, so anyways, that is the white like that. You know, here's some branches up here if you want to create a little bit of a textural continuity. There's lighting right here. You can put a few little highlights on these leaves like this. Look at this right here. Doesn't it kind of bring some of these leaves to life like that? You can put a few more highlights around the leaves that are closest to the light. Okay, now as it moves out into the darkness, see how there's more dots here and less over here. You can put one there, or something. I don't know, it's not so specific. Let's get these ones right here. See, there's my lighting right here. Watch these little highlights. Maybe I'll go with 2 dots on that leaf, you know, because it's closest to my lighting. Okay, watch what I'm doing right here, though. See, on the sides of the leaves right here, facing the light, I'll put my little highlight on the sides of the leaves, facing that light, okay? And it's the opposite on this one. I'm putting them on this side of the leaf, facing the light. So look at this now in terms of a lighting statement with your leaves, but look at that little white up there. Don't those leaves look a lot more three-dimensional with that little area of light? This is what, you know, it looks like without. I mean, I have those dots right there, but... All right, so it really stands out in terms of that white right there, but if these were stamped out in green, you can do that too. All right, so anyways, I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, you know, it'd be kind of cool to stamp out some green leaves down here so you get depth within that foreground. But that's not what this video is about, okay? So transitions of dye-based ink, transitions of alcohol inks on here over my dyes, transitions with paint pens. It all leads to variety. And what do we have in here? Here's the road, okay, when we're thinking about a road. Dark, light, dark. A little clip of some grass. Dark, light. Here it is right here. It's going from dark, lighter, darker, lighter, darker. Trees in here, you know, it's just everything in there. Darker, lighter, you know, but in a very small area. Maybe what's better is to do it with the pens, but you can hit it with a kind of a base tone layer with your dye-based inks. Dark, light, dark, dark, light, darker, lighter, darker. Just it doesn't have to be that pattern, okay? It's just whatever, but you leave variety in there, okay? Even if it's an area on a structure like this is all kind of going back in the distance, it's all flat, you know, flat surface, but you can give it variety like that. And it all ends up adding up to a much richer potential surface area. We're doing it in values, you're doing it in texture, you know, with the white pens and things like that, and you know, the textures of the objects, the trees and such. But that's your key right there. All right, so that, I don't know, that took a while to do because I went into depth about, you know, all these types of things. But we'll finish these off. I'll do some follow-up videos. I'll show you how fast I can color these in here. And we'll look for all of these different concepts. I'll finish these off with some different tones so, you know, you'll see the visual variety happening within the space on all of these, okay? All right, so it's kind of thinking about things a little bit in terms of different, instead of seeing this like a stained glass, like a two-dimensional stained glass, this is a two-dimensional piece of paper, but we're thinking about this in terms of near and far, even sky, okay? I don't know, maybe near and far, like that. I don't know where it would be, okay? But it's like there's air up here, you know, close to us, and then there's I don't know how far we could say, 300 miles away in here or something like that. But you create that with variation like that. Okay, so yeah, anyways, if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. Hope you like, share, and subscribe. And that is our first, I don't know, I talk about this in all my different videos, but this one's really isolating the varied values type of concept within these spaces and objects. All right, until the next video, thanks again for watching.